and welcome to episode 14 of the LNUR Line podcast for LEGO Train fans. We're talking about the Brick Train Awards 2021 winners, and we have a mixture of guests and LNUR members today. So start with me. I'm Richard, chair of LNUR. We have Matt, who's our usual podcast producer.
Hello.
We have Andrew, who's our podcast runner.
Hello.
We have Will.
Hello.
We have Renzo, one of our new members.
Hello.
We have Henry.
Hello.
And then we'll move on to the guests. So we have... Oh, no, we have Miller as well. I'd forgotten about Miller. Wishful thinking. We have many guests with us today. So we also have Enrico, who was a fellow judge for the European region for the Brick Train Awards.
Hello.
We have Glenn Holland, who was a judge last year, but is a winner this year.
And the only American on the podcast. Thanks for having me, guys.
And our token American, yeah, because Trace isn't on today. We've also got Jelle.
Hello.
And we have Tamas as well. And I've definitely said that wrong again, haven't I?
Hello.
Okay, so we're going to move on to some LEGO Train news from March 2021. First up, we've got Will, who's going to talk to us about the Bricklink Designer Program.
Yeah, so this sounds similar to this thing they did in 2019, where they took some sets and effectively funded them as unofficial sets in a crowdfunding program and then released them. There is 31 designs, all of which are 10k winners in LEGO Ideas that didn't go on to production, of which one of them is a railway-based one. It's called Train Station Studgate. And it's a rather smart two-platform, vaguely modular scale station with a train. There's several other designs, some of which could be used for scenic work, some of which are not really appropriate for railways. But yeah, it's I got the monorail for the last time Bricklink did something like this, and I'm probably be looking at the Studgate myself.
Yeah, it looks pretty nice, and I think it'd be nice to support a sort of railway-themed item as well. Okay, we also have an announcement from Henry's going to cover this one, and it's the Brick Train Awards public vote winner.
So the public vote winner was the Prussian G8.1 Güterzug locomotive with PR3T 16.5 tender. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I've definitely done it wrong, but that was by Peter Post from the Netherlands in the Europe region, and it is a very nice looking locomotive in dark green with the typical sort of lower half in red you see in a lot of European locos, and that won the public vote, and it looks very good.
Yeah, I know I'm not an LNUR member, but I would like to comment. Those models from Peter have been absolutely incredible. I follow him on Flickr. I love seeing his work.
All of his entries were really, really high quality. I think he also won the special wagon in Europe with a sort of brake van type thing.
Yeah, correct. He also won the Special Wagon Award, and he made us very difficult this year to judge all the entries.
Yeah, just a bit. Okay, we're going to move on to open up the questions to Enrico first, I think. So I'm sure you've been on the podcast before, haven't you, Enrico? But if you want to introduce yourself, where you're from, and whether you're a member of a LEGO Train Club or anything like that, and what your involvement in the awards, Brick Train Awards this year was.
Well, I haven't been invited for the podcast earlier, so I'm not sure if people know me. I'm Enrico from the Netherlands. I've been building LEGO for quite a while now. I'm a member of the BMR. Together with Race, we are the only contributors outside of America. I'm a member of the LMMTC Dutch train organization, LEGO train organization here in the Netherlands. And my involvement this year in Brick Train Awards was judging the European region and also helping out organizing bits and pieces here and there.
Posting loads and loads of entries, and I'm sure we've still got a couple of entries left in the inbox we need to do. But yep, thanks, Enrico. Glenn, we'll move on to you. So just a quick introduction. I'm sure many people know of you, but for those who don't.
My unfortunate reputation precedes me, I guess. I'm Glenn Holland. On this episode of the podcast, I am the token American. I've been invited to the podcast before, but couldn't make it work. But I'm happy to join today. I live in Pennsylvania, United States. I've been building with Lego for about half my life now, and I'm 25, so you can do the math. And my involvement with the Brick Train Awards this year, I was not a judge, but I entered and won the Best Steam Locomotive for the Americas region. Previous year, I was a coordinator and judge for the Americas.
Great, thank you, Glenn. Jelle, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Jelle. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm 17, currently studying at the university. I won the Best Cheerful Wagon Award for my Mat 24, which means basically a rolling stock from the 1924, the motor carriage for the class.
Great, thank you, Jelle. And I think guest-wise, our list is quite long. Guest-wise, Tamas, if you'd like to just introduce yourself a little bit and what you won in the awards this year.
First, it can be that my sister is going to be drumming soon, so I'm a bit fast. I'm Tamas. I'm 15 years old, still in high school. I'm also from the Netherlands, and I entered my Deutsche Bahn class 44 steam locomotive, and I won the best diesel locomotive in Europe.
Thank you. It's a great model too. There must be some sort of correlation. I seem to feel we did in Europe have a lot of British winners and Dutch winners, and the judges were British and Dutch. There must be some.
Don't mention it. Don't mention it.
So we'll move on, and next thing we wanted to talk about was what inspired, and this is aimed really at the winners rather than the judges, what inspired you to build the kind of specific prototype that won the award? And we'll start with Glenn first, please.
All right. So my winning entry, I entered 3 locomotives into the pool for the best steam locomotive in the Americas region. I entered a Southern Pacific Class C9 280 locomotive, which did not win. I entered a freelance 460 10-wheeler locomotive, which did not win. The winning entry was my model of the New York Central L2A class Mohawk, which is a 482 steam locomotive. This is a very special model to me for a number of reasons, probably the first of which is this locomotive, the L2A specifically, was one of the locomotives that has kind of been on my long list of things to build, if you will, for a number of years at this point. And the universe kind of just aligned itself that I can to make me want to build this locomotive over the course of 2020. Initially, it was produced to be sold under the Brickmania name, which has gone very well. But the model that I entered in the awards is my own personal copy. It features a number of unique design choices and aesthetic differences from the kit version, but a very special model to me. I'm very, very pleased with the way it's turned out. So I guess the inspiration was I needed a locomotive to fill the requirement for Brickmania, but the Mohawk was the special one and kind of won that internal argument, if you will.
It is a really distinctive model. Does it use custom parts? We're looking at a photo here, and it looks like the rods are probably custom, and I imagine the wheels probably too.
Yes, it uses a lot of custom parts. The rods are designed by myself and one of the other Brickmania employees using original drawings from New York Central, or from the American Locomotive Company. It was really nice to have that in the book to be able to reference that. Uses Brick Tracks wheels, uses Big Ben wheels, and uses 3D printed wheels from Brickmania as well. Features custom printing, also done by Brickmania, and the minifigures are copies of the ones included in the kit. Apparently, this was done without my prior knowledge, but my likeness was used for the fireman figure in the kit.
The fireman and not the driver. Oh,
yeah, I lost the driver status to some old man with a mustache, apparently, but I'll take the fireman role.
Fireman's not so bad, I suppose. Thanks, Glenn. Jelle, would you like to go next? So just tell us a little bit more about the model you won with and what inspired you to build it.
Yeah, of course. Well, I entered as I said, wagon from the Mod 24 series from the NS. It was the first major electrical locomotive set in the Netherlands, and well, the entire class, or more importantly, the passenger wagons have a sort of special status to me, because some of the surviving passenger coaches are still in use at the VSM, which is a heritage rail line in Apeldoorn. And I went there to a Steam event in 2019, and that was the first time I saw those wagons, and I just fell in love with them. And I immediately started a draft of the wagons, which still used train windows in dark green, so it was basically impossible. And then I came up with this window design, which made it possible to do it in the original livery, which is cream and green, or green and cream, depends. And the prototype that I built was the end carriage. So there's a motor carriage and an end carriage, and this is the end carriage. And it consists of, I think, 3 third-class compartments and no toilets, actually, funny enough, and the nose, basically, which allowed for easy steering and shunting.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah, I think it is a really interesting model. And is it something you're planning to build? Because the winning design,
Yeah, definitely.
Render, isn't it?
Yeah, I started working on the motor carriage of the class already.
Oh, great. Well, we might see some videos of that maybe later this year.
Yeah, if my salary allows it.
Yes, there's always that
and
problem.
if we can actually attend shows when COVID allows us to again.
Yes,
that'll
that's
be
true.
awesome.
I think it'll be a while here in the UK at least before we get to a show. Thanks.
Yeah, I got the Netherlands too, probably. No problem.
Tamas, would you like to tell us a little bit about your model and what inspired you to build that?
Yes, yeah. Since I'm free, I regularly visit also the VSM here in the Netherlands, and because we mostly have German steam engines in the Netherlands, I have my interest lies more with the German railways. In particular, the freight operations in the late 1960s and 70s. So I originally started modeling a Class 44, I think, 2 years ago. It was a very bad model, but I improved it in the mostly, yeah, in the upcoming years. And in January, I did again a rebuild, and yeah, and I ended up with this.
And am I right in thinking you had a bit of help from Enrico and some other Dutch builders in the Lowlands Model Train Club?
I mostly try to model the engines myself, but I copied the cab window from Enrico's Class 0110, and I copied a little bit from the front part of his tender. But yeah, I try to minimize the copying, but yeah, he gives me a lot of advice, and also most of the other Lowlands Model Train Club members. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what train clubs are good for, is getting some advice from people who have probably been through the same things, even on a different prototype, and have managed to solve them. So it's a really nice model, and congratulations on winning. Very well deserved, I would say. We're going to open it up to a member now, because we did have a member. In fact, we've got 2 in the chat. I've just realised 3, in fact. So Andrew won Best European Steam Locomotive with his A1 Tornado, and Will and Matt, because it was a joint design, won the Pullman. Is it Pullman Brake Coach? I can't quite see.
Pullman Kitchen car.
That's the one. Yeah. So, Will, do you want to tell us a little bit about what inspired you to build the Pullmans? Because you built a variety of Pullman carriages. So give us a bit of background about the prototype and what inspired you to build the model.
So the original design, the original plan for the idea for the design is quite an old one now. And it all started with me when I first got into the hobby watching Andrew's videos of his trains. I think his Pullmans have a similar style of toilet window to mine. And I looked at it and thought, oh, I can do that. And I'll also do it for the doors. Designed initially a much shorter 6-wide Pullman with only one toilet. That was quite good, but then I thought, oh, I can make this bigger. Did the much bigger basic saloon design, which is the same size as the one that I entered, but a much older design now. Fast forward a few years, Matt expressed an interest in building some more Pullman coaches, so I tweaked the design slightly to add improvements I've been meaning to make all along, and then sent him the digital design, and then the coach that turned up that we put in together is basically Matt interpreting my ideas and adding some of his own to make it a new coach. So I don't know if you want to go over to Matt from this point.
We could see if Matt has something to say. Yep.
Okay, so the actual basis of the coach actually started off as a parlour car, because that's the file Will sent me. And obviously Will's already got a parlour and a brake, so having 3 parlours and a brake wouldn't really make too much sense, even as a compressed express train. So I sort of went, well, the closest one to a parlour that would make sense is either going to be a kitchen car, a bar car, or something along those lines. And bar cars weren't that common in Pullmans as far as I was aware. There was a few, but they weren't really as common as kitchen cars. So I decided to do a kitchen car. So about 2/3 of the design, like essentially from where the if you're going from left to right, you've obviously got the toilet, then you've got 3 sets of windows. Up to that point, it's pretty much the same as a parlour car, but from that bit onwards, it's all custom. So where the toilet windows are, that's been moved closer in. The window arrangement's been changed. There's actually been some internal structures to simulate the kitchen area. And the underframe as well has had some slight tweaks and changes, so it's had a bit more detail added. So a gas tank that would power the onboard cookers, and it's had a few other tweaks to simulate some more detail you'd only find on the kitchen cars.
Cool, thank you. And are these available on Block Junction for buy?
Not this particular one. I would have to have a word with Matt and decide how we would share it. But the saloon and the brake one are indeed available, as is the original 6-wide one, if you're not wanting such a massive coach.
They are pretty heavy from what I remember at shows.
Yeah.
It's the William Elliott way, build everything big and heavy.
It doesn't break unless you hit it over somebody's head, and it's probably their head that will break first.
I certainly relate to that building style.
Well, let's put it this way. We had it at the Neen Valley Railway once, and it went flying off the table, and didn't lose any of its parts onto the track, which we're very happy about, but the parts suffered worse than the coach did.
Oh, goodness.
We'll move on to Andrew, who won Best European Steam Locomotive with his A1 Tornado. So, Andrew, do you want to tell us a little bit? Because this model, in some guys, has been going for quite a long time, hasn't it? And
yes.
you recently overhauled it almost into... Was it a complete redesign, wasn't it?
It was indeed, yes. So just to give a bit of background on the prototype itself, this is a brand new steam locomotive that was built and finished in 2008. So it's one of the most well-known steam locos in Britain because of that fact. It's the first kind of big loco like that to be built since the kind of 1960s. So it was a big deal, and it was done completely by kind of volunteers or a volunteer group. They raised £3 million to build it from scratch. So it's a fantastic achievement. So when it was finished in 2008, and I was really inspired by watching the construction of the real engine. So I decided to build my first version of this model in around 2009. It seemed to go pretty all right then, and I've basically been exhibiting it since then. So it's done like 11 years or so on the exhibition circuit, and it's barely put a foot wrong, to be honest. So yeah, unlike some of my other models, I haven't been kind of tweaking it loads. But then, because of the fact that it was 11 years old by that point, there was a lot of things that I thought I could do better with it. And there's been like lots of new parts available, like all of the little curved slopes. One of the biggest problems I thought I had with the old model was the driving wheels were too small. I'd used Big Ben Brick's large wheels at the time, and I can't even remember whether the extra large wheels were available in 2009, or if they were, you couldn't get them in light grey, which is what my model is in. My model's light grey because it's the original livery that they painted the loco when they first finished building it, so it's a kind of ex-works livery. Soon afterwards, they painted it into a much nicer LNUR green livery, and they've also had it in dark blue and dark green. But yeah, I thought I'd go with the grey because it's a bit different. It's kind of makes my model stand out a bit.
I think it did, and particularly from a judging point of view, I think we had about 5 tornado models, which were all
yeah, it was quite funny to see how many tornado models there were, and
but they were
there's a
all,
lot of good ones.
Yeah, there were, but yours definitely stood out. I think partly because of the color, but also because it was probably more detailed in areas that others weren't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, some of the other entries looked good. Some of them had even used the XXL wheels, which I think, depending on the kind of scale you're looking at, could work quite well. I kind of went for a slight compromise with the extra large wheels because of course, you have to try and fit them underneath the running board, and you can't have them sticking up into the splashes. That's always one of the trickiest and most painful things to deal with British locos, at least. But yeah, and I also had to go at making the boiler a bit bigger than my old version of the model, and I used this kind of crazy technique with cheese slopes, but kind of nudging them out by half a plate's width, and it ended up being quite complicated inside, but it seems to hold together.
I'm sure we'll put it through its paces at a show, hopefully later this year, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's not a proper model unless it's had its first time being thrown off the side of the table by accident. So yeah, we'll see how it goes after that.
Well, exactly. Not necessarily even by accident. Just
depends who's driving.
Yeah, well, exactly. Okay, thanks, Andrew. So, final question for our guests before I think we pass over to members as well, and it becomes even more chaotic. So we'll start with Enrico, and what was your? Let's go with what was your favorite category in terms of the entries? So not necessarily thinking about the winner, but what was your favorite category for entries this year?
It's a difficult one. I think it'd probably be the TFL Locomotive category. There were a lot of amazing entries this year, which made it very difficult for us to judge. And we made a short graphic for how many entries each category received. And the TFL Locomotive category was actually the one who received the most entries in Europe. So that's quite impressive compared to all the others entries. So yeah, it was very difficult for us to judge. There were a lot of amazing entries, a lot of strange and different ones as well, and ranging from British entries, Eastern European entries, quite a few Dutch entries, of course. So yeah, I think that was probably my favorite entries just because of the variety between all the entries.
Yeah, there's certainly some really strong TFL models, wagons, locomotives, displays. I think I quite enjoyed the individual display category. We got quite a lot of people entering with sort of layouts they just had at home. So most of them were quite small, but they were done to a really nice standard. And of course, the TFL display category in Europe was the Samuel Accounts English branch line station, which is absolutely superb. And I've known the modeler for quite a few years. I haven't spoken to him recently, and he's always been talking about this branch line model. And it's one of those things that I was thinking maybe he'll never build anything, but he's blown us away with that one, I think.
Yeah, once we posted that picture on social media, everybody was already reacting that probably would win the TFL display category.
I think some categories were easier to predict because there were so many models going up, and you were like, that one's definitely going to win. And then a couple of days later, you get another one in the same category in the same region, and think, oh, that one's going to win now.
Yeah, I was trying to keep up when each entry was received in the email box. I was trying to already kind of judge which would be on my short list. But it was hard to keep up because there were so many good ones coming in at once. I would sometimes just check it in the afternoon and see there were only 2 or 3 entries, and in the evening the entire mailbox would be full. So it was really difficult this year to keep up.
It was pretty hard. Glenn, we'll pass across to you now. So, what was your favourite category this year in terms of entries?
I think I have to agree with Enrico. Watching the locomotive entries get posted across the BTA social medias was just it truly blew me away. The quality and the variety of locomotive entries between both adult and teenage modelers, absolutely astounding stuff. There was some strong competition on all fronts in the locomotive categories, I would say, for sure.
Oh,
that
definitely.
That was my favorite thing to see, is just watching all of those amazing models get posted across the BTA accounts.
I liked seeing the variety of models, and then I think some people entering, I guess they kind of knew they wouldn't win, but seeing their model shared and people like reacting to it and liking it and enjoying it was kind of enough for them. So that was really nice.
What really stood out this year is there was a lot of reactions and a lot of conversation about each entry, especially on Instagram. There are a lot of people always reacting on each entry that we posted, and that's quite respective for considering the amount that we posted. But especially for the locomotive entries, there were a lot of shares, a lot of people talking about them. So the attention was more this year, respectively, compared to last year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it largely was. Yeah. Yellow, would you like to talk a bit about the sort of models you enjoyed seeing posted from other categories?
Yeah, sure. I really like the originality in the other locomotive category, because it's truly, those aren't things you see every day, like a shay on a wagon or a dumped locomotive that has been recovered. I think that the creativity of that is just astounding. But I also really loved some of the locomotive and wagon entries, because some of them were just amazing. Like, I remember seeing this TE locomotive, like with a very striking dark red and tan livery, and the nose was so well done in my opinion.
I think sometimes it's the smaller details on a model. You look at something and think, oh, that's pretty impressive. And the closer you look, the kind of more details you see, the nice part usage you see.
Absolutely.
The electric locomotive in which won in Europe, I think Enrico and I spent a long time looking at that one and the brick built livery, which was just incredible. From a distance, and this is true of a lot of the models entered and a lot of the models that won. From a distance, you can't tell they're Lego. I think that's part of the magic.
Yeah, especially the electric locomotives that won on in Europe. The color scheme was really impressive for it being brick built. There were strange angles or strange slopes inside on the model itself. It's a double-decker train with the roof kind of slopes in, and especially towards the nose, it also slopes more towards the front. And having that strange bluish, greenish, and white color scheme, and also having the orange striping around the doors, is really, really impressive. I'm really curious on how the inside actually looks, because I just want to know what techniques you uses for the striping and getting that almost naturally like shape to it. It has a bit of a killer wheel look to it, to be honest. If you look at the front, it's almost like a killer wheel, just having those white and black eyes in it.
We're looking at it on this recording software, and I'm just noticing that the door has actually got in addition to the orange stripe around the perimeter of the door, there's actually, you can see in the top left corner of the front door, it's two-tone blue. So it means that
Yeah.
door had to be separated along a
Yeah.
diagonal line, which is impressive in its own right. Absolutely incredible work.
And still having that
Really?
perfect angle of the blue color inside of the door and above and beneath it and around it. Yeah, it's really impressive.
Yeah, it really, really is. Tamas, would you like to chip in and tell us sort of some of your favorite entries from this year's awards?
Yeah, my most favorite was just as Jelle and Enrico and all the other people said, this Stadler KISS 2 electric unit. But yeah, I'm not a really big fan of electric trains, but this because all the very round slopes was a really nice model mostly because it's not the most Lego friendly train to build. But yeah, and also there was a dark blue BR01 locomotive, I think. And that was also a nice one with the silver boiler ring, the rings, and all those details. But yeah, I'm mostly a locomotive fan and not very much else. So that's more the reason that I'm not really wagon builder or something.
I think some of the models that we'd seen. I mean, I've seen so many Lego train models in the last month and a half that I've forgotten half of them. But I remember does everybody remember that Technic built Metroliner? And that was in the other category, and it got a massive reaction, and everybody was like, "Oh, well, that's going to win."
I was very upset that he missed a perfect opportunity to call it the Technoliner.
Yeah, I mean, there was every category had. I think at least in Europe, because I know there were a couple of non-contended categories from what I remember, or or maybe not very strongly contested categories. But yeah, the quality of the models is just really, really impressive, and the variety as well. I think that's part of what I like about the awards, and it's seeing one of the winners in America, Glenn, was Owen. I can't remember his surname, but he won an award for his British brake van design in America. And again, the Australasian Steam Locomotive winner was it the Hush Hush?
Yes.
Another British. It's just nice to see all of those, and we had people in Europe sending us Japanese bullet train designs. There was a guy in, I think he was Germany or Austria, and he was sending us. There were some really unusual prototypes from. I think they were from an African country. It was just really interesting, and I actually went and had a look on Wikipedia and read about the railways and things in that country. So it's nice to see the variety anyway.
I think it's the most interesting thing is when you see people build things that aren't necessarily native to them.
Yeah.
A few of us here have had experience with the Brick Model Railroad Trainber. One of those was the Foreign Challenge, where we asked contestants to build something that was not basically foreign to you, open up to into a little bit of interpretation. But seeing that, I always think is really interesting. I think that's definitely manifested itself during the 2021 Brick Train Awards as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it is, the variety is what I like, and sometimes seeing the same prototype but tackled by different designers and seeing the different styles of building and the different techniques they use to accomplish the same thing is nice as well. So we were saying about having the 5 tornadoes. Actually, it would be nice to go back and compare them side to side in more detail. Now I've got more time. But yeah, there we go. So I think members, you are welcome to unmute. We'll try and have a joint discussion between some of the members and the guests. So I do have a couple of general notes on entries before we open it up. So there is a page on the Brick Train Awards site, which is linked. I think it's linked from the winners 2021, and so you can see there the number of entries per category per region. So Australia and Asia were fairly quiet. I think one category in Asia had no entries. I think that was the T-fold display. We sadly didn't have any winners. I think Europe and the USA were pretty busy, and Americas even. So I did see some discussion online around different categories, and I've certainly talked to quite a few Lego Train fans over the last few weeks. I'm sure everybody has ideas on categories, and we are open to some ideas. We are limited, I think, limited a little bit by the administration of those, because running the event is a lot of hard work for about a month and a half, and adding more rewards is even more hard work. So there's that. There's possibly a limit of sponsors as well. So sponsors really will only stretch so far in terms of prizes. And we've been really grateful for Trick Bricks for sponsoring, and Brick Tracks, and who else do we have? Train Bricks, and also to No Starch Press. And they've all chipped stuff in. And I think, we could do the awards without prizes, but it's a bit more special if we do get some prizes. I think that's really all I wanted to say. Henry is the LNUR mathematician. So he's got some more stats on entries, and hopefully has a couple of minutes of interesting number facts for us.
Okay, so the first thing I thought was quite interesting was that for each region, they had very varying proportions of each locomotive. So in America, the highest of the four main locomotive categories, steam, diesel, electric, and other, they had 38% steam. And then in Asia, it was 38% electric. Australasia had 39% diesel and 39% electric. And Europe had 38% diesel. And globally, there were 37% diesel entries, 26% steam, 28% electric, and 9% other. And Europe, with 69 diesel locomotive entries, in fact had more entries in that category than Australasia did across every category, which it just shows how many European entries there were, I think.
I think Enrico and I had, it's a tough job anyway, judging, but the volume of entries in Europe is, pretty high.
Yeah, especially for all the locomotive entries, the amount of entries is so high that you can easily lose an entry out of sight. So especially when we try to judge all the winners, we were looking through, like you said, 69 entries for diesel. That's quite a lot for a Gmail inbox to go through, and to keep track of each contestant and each winner on your shortlist. It takes a while.
It definitely took a while, didn't it, Enrico?
Yeah.
It was fun though, seeing all the designs. But we turned them around, so the entries close on Sunday at midnight, and all of the winners are submitted by Tuesday night, and then we record the winners announcement on the Wednesday. So essentially, judges get 48 hours or so to turn around the winners. And if you haven't been keeping on top of entries, then it's a tough job. Did you have any more, Henry? Any more stats?
Yes, I certainly do.
I knew you would. Go on, then.
Yeah, so the Out of the Box award goes to Asia for having the highest proportion of locomotives in the other category at 15%, compared to only 4.3 in Australasia at the lowest. Then the anti-COVID one, which was for the most passenger entries, was Australasia, with 31% of their entries being passenger wagons. For freight, it was a much smaller amount, at only 13% of the entries in Europe. the oddball wagon was 7% of entries in America at the highest. And apparently Asia likes building structures because they had 7% of their entries, more than any other region. And the Youth Award goes to America for having 29% of their entries in a TEFL category, which I think is very impressive, considering that's a very small age group.
It is. I think it goes to show, though, that the percentage of people, the percentage of total Lego fans who like trains, who take part in the awards, is pretty small. So it goes to show that there's actually quite a big following for Lego trains, and building American steam locomotives or British or Asian trams or whatever it happens to be. There's it's quite a niche community, but it's a big one.
Yep. And overall, globally, 18% of entries were by TEFLs in their categories, which is very good. And then in terms of individual displays, Europe had the highest proportion of entries. With group displays, Europe had the highest proportion of entries because everywhere had one apart from Europe, which had 4. And considering Europe had just over 50% of all entries, that's not surprising. And then the disqualified entries, mainly because I'm told they forgot to include a country or didn't fulfill the rules in some other way, 8.7% of European entries were disqualified.
Yeah.
I think we should get an award for failure to enter or failure to read.
Yeah, failure to read the 3 very simple points we ask for in a submission, I guess. But yeah, a lot of people, we did try and get back to people and say, we need a country or a region, because it's most of the time we could kind of work it out. If you've got a .de email address, then you're in Germany and you're in Europe. But if you've got a .com, you could be anywhere. But a lot of people just didn't reply to the emails. And if they'd replied, they could have been entered, and they might have won. There was some, from what I remember, there was some pretty good models left in those, which I will have deleted by now. But yeah, so check your emails, damn it. Okay, so
I've just got 3 more things to say.
Oh, go on.
America also had the highest proportion of TEFL wagon and TEFL display or structure entries, and the Tornado Award for the TEFL Loco, because it turns 13 this year, of course, is Asia.
Ooh. Okay, thank you, Henry. That was pretty interesting. You can do that slot again in about a year's time now.
Yep, I'll be having so many more things because I'll have 2 years of statistics to compare.
Yeah, I'm a bit sad I didn't think about doing it the first year.
Well, you didn't know me back then. You're having a whole podcast on it, whether you like it or not, next year.
I'm sure Matt looks forward to that one.
It'll be easy to edit.
True. We'll open up to all members or guests, so feel free to unmute yourself if you want to take part. I know some people have been silent for quite a while, so thank you for that. Okay, so we'll open it up, and I think for anybody who hasn't answered already, which I don't think is anyone, would you like to tell us your favorite of the winning models from any region, global or one of the other regions? There is a link in chat that for winners, which you can have a look at if you're in a panic. Anybody want to go first? I can see Will's lighting up. I'm going to pick on Will. I'm going to pick on you anyway.
All right. I mean, the one that sticks in my mind is 2 TEFL displays, actually. The one that won in America, the loop with the side.
Oh, that's really nice. And I think that guy had posted in the Lego Rail Facebook group with better photos than he submitted to the awards. But it's such a nice little loop. It's simple. You can run trains. It's really nicely done.
So yeah, that one and Samuel's spectacular curved platform.
Yeah,
which,
very nice. Too smart for his own good. I imagine he will be at some point. Yep. Okay. What about? Well, who hasn't spoken for a while? We've not heard from Miller for a while, which is pleasant, but I suppose we'll let him speak again. Chris, would you like to tell us your
well.
favourite winning model of any category, any region?
Can I be greedy and say 2 because I can't pick between them?
Yeah, go on then.
Okay. Well, the first one is the best Lego Diesel Loco by Katsuaki Matsubara.
Oh yeah, that was nice.
That's DD51.
Yeah.
There's just something about Japanese trains and locos that I really like. I mean, they're not always the prettiest trains, but they've just got a certain feel to them.
But is that a Japanese National Railway diesel, or is it a?
It says Japan National Railway class, so I'm assuming so.
I guess so. Yeah, it's really really cool. I quite like the use of the windows down the side with the sort of lattice windows, and the brown undercarriage is quite unusual. So everybody builds those in black, but actually with brown, I guess it looks a bit rusty and a bit used, but you can probably see more of the detail than you would in black.
That's true.
Mm.
The other one is the best electric loco, the Austrian one. Blue, green.
Oh yeah.
Well, for me, the white, green, green, and green. Although I will say, when I first saw it, I thought it was a double-decker coach, like a bus coach.
Oh yeah, I can sort of see that. You squint a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll pick on a guest. So, Tamas or Jelle, would you like to? Do you have a particular favourite model from all of the winners this year?
My favorite was from the can't remember the Prussian G8.1 from the
Public vote, you mean?
Yeah, the public vote.
Oh yeah, that was really nice.
Yeah, but that's more because I am a big fan of the German freight locomotives. But yeah, the way it's quite unusual German model because of the dark green and that more reminds me to a British or Dutch steam locomotive. But
I think
the
that's
colors really. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
Oh, the colors are really nice with the red and black to combine. So maybe I will do it once.
I think part of the reason it stood out, so the public vote award was the judges from each region were also asked to select some runners-up that nearly won their category but didn't as part of that. And I think Enrico and I had both flagged this model as something. I think the dark green color does help it stand out because see a lot of European mainland locomotives are black, so the color helps, and it's nicely set on a little bit of a scene as well, which helps. Okay, what about Glenn? I don't think we've spoken to Glenn for a bit.
What sticks out to me from the entries? I have a good reason for choosing this one. The best other locomotive worldwide and America's winner, the narrow gauge Shay, which was presented on the flat car by Rob Hendricks.
Oh yeah.
The reason for that
Rob's a
is
great guy.
because Rob was sending me pictures and videos as he was developing that model during the month of February. He pretty much designed and built it within the month of February, and got it working. Of course, it operates using his own voodoo wizardry micromotor systems that he's been working on for some time now. It's a really, really neat locomotive, and there's the reason why he presents it on a flat car is because some time ago he sent me a photo of a similar looking Shay sitting on top of a flat car which was fashioned from a steam locomotive tender frame. And so he said, I have to build this, and then during the month of February, he's sending me and others photos of this, saying, "Hey, I've worked this out. I got this working now." And then all of a sudden, oh look, waking up Friday morning, oh look, Rob's won best other locomotive worldwide. Good for him.
I love the story he said for why he actually entered it into Brick Train Awards. I was on a talk with him the other day. He said basically he did it because he wanted to build some narrow gauge but couldn't afford the track. So he decided to enter into the award so he could win some track.
He built it pretty much specifically to win a Trix Bricks prize, so he could get some narrow gauge track to run the locomotive on, which he built for the awards. Mission accomplished, I guess you could say.
Yeah, as a financial
There was a
strategy, it's
builder
quite solid.
in.
It's a bit like entering the lottery because you need money to enter the lottery, but yeah.
Something about putting the cart before the horse in this case.
Was a winner, I think, of the best other locomotive in the Asia region, I think, called Farouk. And he was also after he's got a narrow gauge locomotive, which is the one that won, I think. And he wanted more narrow gauge tracks, and now he's won a Trix Bricks voucher to buy more narrow gauge tracks from Trix Bricks, which is good. Yeah, really cool model.
That was as far as narrow gauge locomotives, that also stuck out to me. I've been following him online for some time now, and watching him develop all these narrow gauge locomotives has been absolutely a treat to watch.
I think he submitted a few models, and they were all really nicely done. I do love his winning model. We're gonna jump to Miller, who has something to ask Andrew about his Tornado. Oh dear.
Okay. It's not so much a
I'm raising
question.
myself.
It's more of the fact that I don't mention Steam Locomotive often. Whose Steam Locomotive has given me so much joy. The time I said 4 out of 10 wrong colour when the picture was in grey.
The color actually stood out. The color actually stood out for me personally because a Tornado, you'll probably see it 9 of the 10 times in a green, and sometimes if you're lucky in dark blue. But the grey version actually has something rather unique and good looking about it. It's a strange color combination that you don't see that many often, and especially for British locomotives, which were quite a few grey ons, you don't see too many Lego models have that color scheme. So that's one of the reasons why I definitely picked that out. And what I really want to point out is that with the light bluish grey color scheme, all the golden details actually stand out a bit more compared to a much stronger color like dark green or dark blue.
I think it speaks to the story of Tornado itself being one of the first mainline capable steam locomotives built in the 21st century. I mean, that in its own right is impressive, and then seeing it, of course it's going to have some livery changes over the years, but seeing it in the gray just makes it even a little bit more unique and special.
You guys are going to have a problem next year. You guys are going to have a problem next year. First year you pick the P2, which they are building, sorry. Second year you pick the A1. They haven't got a third engine. What are you going to pick next year?
They were going to build a V4, I think, after the P2.
Yes, that consists of about 6 driving wheels and a chimney. Having stood next to them, I know exactly. Yeah. There's not much of that one yet. I feel it's as exciting an engine as the first two.
I do have a bit of a story about me building Tornado in the grey livery. And I think when I was initially designing it in a very primitive version of Lego Digital Designer, I toyed with the idea of doing it in the LNUR apple green, and I was at the time I think quite a few of you will be familiar with Carl Greatrix, aka Bricktrix, who was quite prominent at the time in some of the models he was building.
I was
talking to him, and I was actually, as I say, considering building it in the apple green, but he pretty much was the one who convinced me to try doing it in the grey instead, because it was something different. So you can kind of thank him for it.
It's also worth pointing out that from a Lego point of view, building it in light bluish grey is a much sensibler decision than building it in dark green or light green.
Absolutely.
Both those colours are absolute nightmares for railway equipment.
Even the bright green, some of the colours are surprisingly expensive.
Well, I say, having built a locomotive in the normal green, most of the parts aren't bad, but at some point you're going to want a tile with a clip on it. Good luck, mate. and dark green is even worse.
Okay, we haven't heard from Renzo for a while, so Renzo, would you like to? Do you have a particular favourite model from the awards this year? Which won, or maybe which didn't win?
Well, I'm just new to the hobby. I got sucked in trying to build a Hogwarts castle locomotive, which turned out to be the Alton Hall, and the dark red color on the Dutch entry for the wagon was something I really loved. That was it was kind of brake fan kind of thing. A little bit of scenery around it. No, not this one. Yeah, that one. Yeah, I really, really, really like this one, and it's especially the details around it.
It's really superb. I mean, there were some builders, and I'm sure Enrico will probably agree, and Glenn from his experience, there were some builders who submit multiple models, and you think they're all so good, and one of them has to win.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it was a case of we just didn't know which category he was going to win, but it was like it's kind of obvious he's going to win something because his models are so good.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. But on the other, and the only thing I can say is like, well, I'm new to the hobby, and it was like a little bit overwhelming. like I'm focusing on plank wagons right now, just to ease my mind a little bit because the locomotives are so incredible all. So no, I really like it. It's a nice hobby.
Yeah, really smart, and at least for my British Railway eyes, a slightly unusual prototype as well. I like that. Tamas, would you like to chip in with something?
I already told my favorite entry, but
did. Sorry, I've lost track of which order I've done people in. Okay, so right, let's move on. And the next query we have, I think it would be good rather than a question as such, to bring up the fact that we did have a lot of British winners this year in Europe. So we were none last year. This year, best steam locomotive was Andrew's Tornado. Best other locomotive was Steve May's large-scale rocket, which is absolutely superb.
And he actually going to stop building them now.
No, he keeps building them in different scales. So the one that won, I think, was one he built for an exhibition for a museum up in Newcastle, and I still haven't had a chance to see it. But you know, Steve himself will probably, well, he does confess that he's not a train fan, not a railway fan necessarily, but he's captured a lot of the details brilliantly well. And he does have one on Lego Ideas as well, which is actually a smaller scale than this one, from what I remember. And he did submit 2 rockets at different scales, not quite as many as we got tornadoes, I suppose. So what are people's thoughts on the British wins this year? I suppose particularly aimed at members, but actually open as a question to anybody.
I liked them.
I think it's been said a lot before, and as somebody who was on the outside looking in this year, I can definitely say that going through the entries, at least that I saw posted, I'm sure was not an easy task.
No,
impossible,
really.
There were so many. Like I said, I have been just blown away by the entries on across all regions and across all categories. And I think that at the end of the day, I think people need to remember that somebody's going to lose, and very few people are going to win. Are going to win.
I guess anything. Yeah, we did have a couple of pretty bad losers, sadly. Who I know they messaged Kale directly, and we had emails from them. Somebody does have to win. Many people do have to lose.
Look, I was in a bad mood that night. All right.
I think it's just important to.
There's definitely a rule about no Iron Brew liveries. Obviously people are going to be disappointed. But somebody has to win, somebody has to lose, and try next year. Well, firstly, the winners from previous, you can't enter a model that's won again in the awards, so they're out of the mix. But just keep building and use it as a learning experience. Look at the techniques other people have done, and it is. I will say the awards are quite down to judges. It's what the judges' preferences are. I saw a couple of comments about not many renders won this year, and I think we probably had more renders win last year. And that was just, I don't think Enrico and I purposely decided we didn't like models because they were renders. It was just we liked the prototypes that people had built that happened to be brick built more.
Yeah, I agree. And quite a few renders we were able to write off because they used parts that don't exist in Lego. I know that quite a few designs used, for example, parts which weren't made in dark red. So that's one of the reasons why not a lot of renders won. And beside that, we don't prefer real life built versions, but most of the time, real life built versions have a bit more looks to them. You're able to recognize it a bit better, or it just makes the colors pop out a bit more. If you take the electric wind, for example, for the European section, the double-decker train, the Stadler Kiss train set, if that was a render, you probably won't be able to recognize all the strange colors inside of it, all the striping. But if just having it brick built just adds a bit more wow to it. It just gives a bit more look to it than having the render of it. Because most of the time, if you see a render, you're not sure if it's able to be built in real life. But just having the real life model to see, and especially having different perspectives of the model itself, just adds a bit more. And I think that's one of the reasons why more real life versions won compared to brick built versions.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, so the original question was, although we have deviated, and I think that was pretty interesting. But the original question there was, what did people think of the British winners, and also I guess there were a lot of Dutch winners this year, and we happen to have a British and Dutch judge. Actually, I seem to remember a lot of the time that actually Enrico's short list of models had quite a lot of British things on, and mine happened to have a lot of Dutch things on.
Yeah.
So it wasn't actually necessarily me picking the British stuff, because I guess I see that all the time. And I was talking to Will just before we started recording a podcast, and yeah, I'm almost blind to the British designs because I see them all the time. And but the European designs are a bit more exotic.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why a lot of Dutch and British won this year was because a lot of entries were Dutch and British. There
Also
were quite
that.
a few across Europe, quite a few Italians, French, for example, and there's still Australia, for Austria a winner, from Portugal there's a winner, but most of the entries were actually from from Britain and the Netherlands. So that's one of the reasons why you see a bit more of those builders.
And I think part of the reason we did have a lot of British winners again was that, we had a lot of British entries last year as well. Certainly more this year, I would say. But people submitted models last year which didn't win, and they've gone. They've gone back. They've redesigned bits. They've taken bits off. They've added lining. They've done things to improve their model. Maybe that's why they stood out more this year.
I think that the winners are still very deserving.
Yeah, I think so. It doesn't take away, doesn't take away anything from the winners.
I would also, and this is kind of a general comment on the win versus lose thing. I think it's important to remember that entering into something like the Brick Train Awards, you accept the fact that you are, opening yourself up to not win, essentially. And I think it would be healthy to not expect to win.
Yeah,
I can't speak for anybody there, but it certainly helps with the mindset, I suppose. Because you have to remember, like, this is a very kind of subjective thing in a lot of ways.
But yes, we could. I think the judges could look at all of the models entered again, and we'd come up with different winners this week, probably.
It's certainly possible. I mean,
Yeah.
And I know a large part of the conversation, at least that I have seen since the winners were announced, was that a lot of the judges did not come out of the winners' selections with the same picks that they had going in. And I think that says a lot about, the amount of discourse there is between the judges about which one do we actually want to award for this year.
Yeah. I think certainly for the global picks, we did spend a lot of time discussing, and we'd nominated a winner for one category, and then 10 minutes later we'd be thinking, well, actually maybe we could swap that one, because we do try and get a good spread of winners across regions as well. So, to a point, we don't want all of the winners in the Americas. We don't want all the winners in Europe. We want to spread it out a bit. And also, it's impossible. The things like the group display, some of the entries for that were incredible. The winning one in Europe was the Polish lug, which I'm not even going to embarrass myself by attempting to pronounce. And they've got an absolutely stunning display, which was consistently done for a very large scale display, and it's really nice. It's really impressive. There were other displays which had very nice bits, but they maybe weren't quite as consistent in style the whole way through. And that's what got that. That's what got the Polish display into first place.
Details like that do make a huge difference.
Yeah, it was consistent the entire way through their display, whereas other displays were maybe works in progress, and there was the odd base plate missing, or there was a bare section where they were going to build something and they hadn't maybe quite finished it. So
out of interest, because I was wondering in this, because I input a display as well. Never expected it to win because it was literally just some buildings I've built put together with some track I've built. But would you say, so you got that layout that's very nice, but if you've got a layout that's just a diorama, quarter of the size, but is an even higher level, which one would you rate higher? Would you go for the one that's incredibly detailed diorama, or would you go for the one that's slightly lower detail but is a complete and working railway?
I guess part of the answer is it depends what day it is, because we could look at it. We could look at it one day and pick one, and we could look at it another day and pick another. I think we certainly turned down some very big. I think it was actually in the individual display. We turned down some much bigger displays than the one that won, because, and I think it was the Winter Village one that won the individual.
Winter Village won because it was.
It was just unusual, and it was done to the highest standard. Yeah,
and I think it's one of the best winter/Christmas themed layouts that I have seen in my entire life. But there were some pretty amazing entries on that one too. Quite a few with extra larger scale. There was I believe it was an Italian builder which built a entire layout inside of a mountainside.
That was really impressive.
That was really impressive, but at the same time, the details were a bit lower compared to this Christmas train layout. Personally, I would prefer more details compared to the size itself.
And sometimes it wasn't necessarily size. So if you think about was it the American T-fold display? Was that nice? It's just a simple loop with a siding. But that won over. I'm pretty sure there was some much bigger displays in the T4 display. You think about the best structure. Structures. The one that stands out for me is the America's structure winner, which was
Maryland.
Germantown, which it's not particularly big compared to some of the entries we got, but the detail on it is. It was just really smart. Some really nice station building, steps down to the platform, the grass, the little shelter. It was all just really nicely staged, really nicely done.
Really well done, but not also overdone.
And the size is quite realistic for the station.
Yeah.
What I do also want to point out is the winner for the structure award in the Europe, Ogla Mattis' Roundhouse. The first one in 2 years for a 12-volt related system to win, because it's entirely one on 12-volt.
That was a category that we had to, didn't we have to go back to it? And we left it for a while and came back, didn't we?
Yeah. The structure award was really difficult to judge this year.
I really like the abandoned train shed by Jürgen. I can't remember the guy.
We entered that on the public vote, and
that ended up on the public vote because it was such a strong model.
Yeah, but for the roundhouse from Hogla Mattis, the picture that he entered is just, it could be on the model catalog from Lego back in the 70s, 80s, because it looks so incredibly well done. It just has the entire 12-volt theme to it, but more on the realistic side. I do see quite a lot of 12-volt layouts, but most of the time it's just having a track on a piece of piece of wood or a small layout. But this has everything to it, and everything has the 12-volt feel to it.
It
And
looks
that's
straight out of
reason
one of
I
the idea
definitely
books
want
of the era.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's awesome.
And he's got quite a few interesting videos on his YouTube channel as well of the entire roundhouse operating. The turntable works, there are lights, trains are able to go inside, there's a full interior inside of it. So it's definitely
it's
a worthy
really cool.
winner.
Very much in the style of sort of 12-volt era, but slightly more detailed, probably.
I'd probably say one of the big things with displays, and certainly individual ones, and some of the structures, it's the cohesiveness and general fit of everything.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't say we're guilty of it, but you go and see even model railway displays, and 90% of it will look absolutely fantastic, but then you're drawn to the 10% of it which isn't great because maybe there's a chunk of missing ballast. It could be there's, graffiti on one bit and it looks great, but then there's a huge blank wall which would be primed for graffiti, which is completely blank.
Exactly. Yeah. There were quite a few entries on the group awards, which had, for example, parts of the layouts which weren't filled in. We just have the track lying on the table itself, and that kind of ruins it because on the one side it was a perfect layout, and on the other side there was just a track lying on the table itself.
It's a really interesting point to discuss within the scope of like the standout builds and picking winners. A lot of times it comes down to the details that are missed rather than the ones that aren't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point.
Yep, I would agree with that. I think. Okay, so we've got 2 more questions left before we wrap up. So the next one, and we discussed this in the pre-awards podcast. I think it might be fun to revisit it now we've seen the entries. Is if you could change one rule for the awards, what would you change? And I know we discussed probably at length the rule about third-party parts and 3D printed parts. So I'll just throw that open. I know Will has very strong views on it, so I'm going to throw it to Will.
I mean, I can't say my opinions have changed any.
No, I didn't think they would.
I still think my attitude is very much, if it's built within the principle of the system you're building in, because whilst it is nominally the Lego system, there is no real merit to a Lego brick as opposed to any other company's bricks. What you're doing is putting an interlocking system together and making something nice out of it. So my attitude is still very much, whilst it is built to the built in the style of the system, if it happens to be an official Lego brick or a Mega Bloks brick or a Blue Bricks brick or a custom bit designed specifically to work on Lego trains, it's fine by me. It's the overall effect that I'm looking at.
So I guess I'm a bit torn on this. So for me, it is a Lego Train Awards, and obviously we use to build the quality of models that we want to see. I think you've got to allow some non-Lego part usage for wheels, for rods, for power systems, maybe. I think I personally would draw the line at blue bricks and things like that, using basically a third-party supplier of bricks.
They are still Lego bricks. It just happens to be bricks that the Lego company themselves have not released in that color.
Well, they're Lego compatible, aren't they?
You get into the clone brand versus third-party discussion there.
Well, yeah, when we come to that, my simple argument is Lego did not invent the system. They just monopolized the system. So you can't go Lego is some inherently valid and everybody else is inherently not, because, as I often say, Mega Bloks does parts that I wish Lego would do, which are really good parts.
To counterpoint, we still call ourselves Lego Train fans.
It's the
dominant
I
thing.
think it's probably worth drawing the distinction between just taking part in the hobby and building the models however you want, and then for the particular requirements of this competition. But yeah, in terms of when people just want to build a model for their own hobby, then there's nothing wrong with them doing whatever they want to do because it's just their model. But for the purpose of the competition, then perhaps it's more down to how the judges and the organisers feel.
the end of the day, you enter the competition, you follow their rules, and if you don't follow their rules, you don't win the competition. As it happens, the competitions suit me because I tend to design my designs to be built by people who don't want to go to 70 different websites. So it doesn't affect the things that I enter, but I could see some people who would want to enter great builds who are restricted from doing so due to what I feel is a very arbitrary rule.
I'm not sure I would agree with arbitrary. Well, I guess in a way, all of the rules are arbitrary, aren't they?
I mean, when it comes to what is and isn't allowed, yes. You want
it is
simple
a bit arbitrary.
word.
I just want to point out that I think it's really funny that the prices you are able to are not Lego, and you are that's the main thing. Like, as long as Lego is not sponsoring it, I'm feeling a lot for William's argument.
I think. Well, yeah,
It's a nice sense of irony.
I would draw the line out because there was one person at Eurobricks forum, and I probably mentioned this the last time we discussed this, who did a Lego subway train, which was literally an entire 3D printed shell designed to fit the Lego system.
The Mike Moon subway. I remember this conversation.
Why are you bothering to build it out of Lego when you can clearly 3D print it and make it a model train?
Yeah, to be honest, that also reminds me of, I think it was also an entry this year. There was also a tornado entered which had a lot of 3D printed parts.
Yes.
And honestly, it looked great, but in my opinion, it's not really Lego modeling anymore, since, well, a lot of the details could have been achieved by Lego, in my opinion, and that we just added to the Lego feel instead of a model feel.
That's the one with the buffers and the smoke box door and that are all 3D printed, aren't they?
Yeah, and a lot of metal wire, copper wiring and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
So I guess
the smoke machine, I love that. I would love that in my own models,
cool.
but the rest, nah, it doesn't really. It's not really my style.
How about making it a percentage of Lego bricks has to be in each model?
I think that gets really.
Yeah.
It's a very.
You go and measure it.
Yeah.
It's a really logical step to think like, all right, well, we need to have a percentage, but I think you get into really, there's an adjective that I'm forgetting, but it's just, I think it kind of defeats the purpose of.
I would say
in that case, because you spend so much time arguing about, all right, well, this person used like 3 extra brick arms monopods than this other person. Is that really going to dictate this model is better than the other one,
And
or this model is more deserving of an award?
And Chris, do you really want to spend all that time going through, okay, that's real, that's Lego, that's not Lego, I don't know about that, I think that's not Lego. Do you want to do that for 700 entries?
So what I think is that we need to think of it less about is it Lego or is it not, and think about more about is it... So, for instance, the wheels and the rods. The wheels, you literally cannot build them out of Lego. So you have to accept that if you're going to get wheels that look right, you're probably going to have to go for a third party. So those get a free pass. The rods is a bit more of a grey area, but realistically, you, especially on British models, which are narrower than American models and some European models, you can't really do it. And if you've got somebody who's done like that tornado that's just been mentioned, which has got a lot of 3D printed parts, if you've got somebody who's gone to the effort to make 3D printed rodding that fits on the Lego system but looks like it works like the real ones, that's actually kind of that's quite creative. But where what I sort of draw the line at is when you've got 3D printed parts that, whilst obviously a better representation than the Lego build you could do instead, can be done in Lego. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Can be done in Lego. So I took exception at the fact that he modeled this very high fidelity 3D printed chimney that looks exactly like the real thing. But I'm like, yes, but I feel like you could have done that in Lego and it wouldn't have been that much worse.
For me personally, I would always I do always use the official Lego standpoint. There's a Lego World here in the Netherlands, one of the biggest events in Europe, and that's organized by Lego itself. And the rule that Lego has is quite simple. If Lego doesn't provide or makes the part, let's say back in the old days, a Bluetooth controlled device for your models, then you're allowed to use it. For wheels, for example, Lego doesn't make XXL wheels, so you're allowed to use it. But if Lego makes a part in a certain color, which might be cool to use in dark green, but Lego doesn't make it in dark green, you're still able to use it. But don't go designing your entire own part and use that for. Well, you could still use a part that Lego does make. So the line is a bit more. If Lego doesn't make it, you're allowed to use it. But don't go designing your entire model in 3D printed
That's the
parts.
thing. You could say, well, yeah, you could start saying, well, it doesn't quite do this part as well, and then you'd end up with something that's basically all 3D printed.
Exactly.
I think Matt had something to say a couple of minutes ago. Matt, is it still relevant?
Yeah, that's actually two things. Firstly, for Miller's argument about a certain percentage, you'd probably get some people who just use the internal filler as their quota. So you'd probably get some people who might say use the Blue Bricks dark blue back catalogue to build a loco, but then on that argument of a certain percentage has to be Lego, maybe it's the tender, some of the chassis, and then the entire infill of the boiler is Lego. But according to the rules, you'd have still been allowed to enter. So from that perspective, I would say the rule should be that it has to be primarily Lego, and to build on other people's comments, wheels and rods, 90% to, I'd say 95% of all Steam Loco models have custom wheels or custom rods in one form or another, because there is, with the exception of certain rods, there is no legitimate way to do most Steam Loco and even some diesel models without going to the custom third party. Again, with control systems, Lego is very restrictive, especially with all the infrared. There's only 8 channels available. You know, group displays, you couldn't really operate on just 8 channels because some models have lights and that sort of stuff. So aftermarket control systems are very much a requirement in that sense. I think the crux of the issue is more about parts that aren't necessarily available in certain colours, or certain parts that are available but are prohibitively expensive. And the best example I would use of this is actually Will's Hall design, and it's actually something we've actually had a chat about in private, in that it uses the 1x1 brick modified with a horizontal clip. Now, that piece, you can actually use that piece in dark green because it comes in 2 or 3 different sets, and it comes across 2 different mould styles. But if you were going to go and buy that piece off Bricklink from the official European sellers for a legitimate Lego piece, you're paying €5 each if you're going to sellers that have got more than one. On the flip side, Lego themselves had it on Bricks and Pieces, because I did check this earlier today, for I think it was something like 17p or 11p. Something that is more expensive than you'd probably pay as an average, but it's still available. But unfortunately, Lego Bricks and Pieces were sold out. Blue Bricks have the exact same mould in dark green, and I think you can get 100 for €5. So from that perspective, is that piece allowed? Because it still fits within the Lego system. It's a Lego piece, like in terms of like the mold style and the shaping, but it's not a piece that would be affordable, generally speaking, for a model, unless you went to third party. You know, and there's other bits and pieces on very similar lines, which is very much a grey area, but it's always that argument of, do you have to pay that extra, you know, Lego premium, or do you say that in that instance, because, you know, say your model uses 10 of the piece, the cost of the entire model is half just in 10 pieces or something?
For me, I think that's just tough, and either find a way around designing it or just cough up. That's part. part of the Lego hobby is that not all parts are available in the same quantities as others in different colors. So for me, that's part of the hobby. I think we need to wrap this up anyway, because the podcast is, as usual, running over a little bit. But I think generally we try and go with the consensus of the Lego train community on what is and isn't acceptable. So I think we've kind of accepted that sort of 3D printed wheels and rods and track is fine. It gets a bit more contentious, I think, when it's other elements, when it's, blue bricks parts replacing what should or could be a Lego part. But yeah, we'll keep thinking about it. It's there, and I'm sure we'll be having this discussion in a year's time, and we still won't have decided, probably. Very likely. Right, we have one final question to wrap up. So, guests, members, feel free to chip in. So, I think we did this one last year as well. It was quite a good one. So, what would, if you could, say, swap one of the categories? What would it be, and what would the new category be? So, if you could remove one of the existing categories from this year's awards and replace it with another, which would you go for? And I'm going to pick on Henry first, because he's the mathematician, so I presume he's going to be logical and pick a category that didn't have many entries, if he's still awake.
Yes, I would remove, individual display had very few entries, especially in Australasia, where it had 0 in the T-fold version, but then it's really nice. So I don't know what category I'd remove, because I like, even the diesel category had some nice things in.
It did, yes, that's true.
I'd probably, the only thing I'd consider doing would be merging structure into individual to create a new one, but I wouldn't want to do that.
I think there's actually a lot of overlap, and I think even me, who had devised the categories, there was quite a lot of overlap between those, and maybe we don't need both and we could do something else with it.
Yeah, if I had to, I'd merge them, and then I don't know how many entries, because you didn't give me a detailed breakdown, but I'd do a narrow gauge category if there were enough entries.
We have had quite a few requests for that. At the moment, a narrow gauge loco, if it was running on the sort of 4 wide track that Trix Bricks and other people do, that would go in the other locomotive category, because the rules at the moment are that if it runs on standard Lego track, then it goes in steam, diesel, or electric. Obviously, you could build a narrow gauge locomotive which ran on standard Lego track, and then it would be, So there's a bit of a weird quirk in the rules there, I guess.
I think you would just have to define it by what gauge it runs on IRL.
Yeah, that might be a better way of doing it. I think so we've had requests for narrow gauge. We've had requests, and this was something I think Enrico and I were thinking about as well at some point over the last couple of months. Was actually what we don't have at the moment is a full train category.
+1 for that.
It's the Brick Train Awards, and we don't actually have a train category.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
because
for
actually
next
a
year,
lot of
I would definitely say split the locomotive in train sets, because we had a lot of locomotives and a lot of train sets. That's one of the reasons why steam, diesel, and electric are so overcrowded for entries.
I think that's part of the reason. And I think a lot of people. So if you submitted a model of a diesel locomotive and it had a rake of 10 carriages, and you would submit that into the diesel locomotive category, as judges, we should only have looked at the locomotive and not the full rake of lovely carriages behind it. So I think a train category of some sort, and also it might solve or go towards solving that issue we've got with multiple units at the moment, because we've had a couple of requests for separate multiple units.
So if you're having a train category, would that include both multiple units and also, say, a steam locomotive with matching carriages as one entry?
Loco haul type stuff. I think that's the sensible way to do it. And numbers-wise, in terms of entries,
I would say
suspect
just a
that
train
would
set.
work.
If you have, for example, a steam locomotive just pulling two passenger wagons, that also counts as a train set. If you have an entire double-decker electric train with 6 carriages, it also counts as a train set. So I think we definitely need to look more in the train set entries or categories next year to spread out the entries a bit more.
So I would.
I must agree too, because honestly, my entry, the Mat 24, actually works better as like consists of a motor carriage, 2 or 3 passenger wagons, and then the end carriage instead of just singular wagons. I did make sure to include like one render of the entire model just to give a full view, but I was kind of disappointed that there wasn't like a full train entry for it.
Yeah, I think we can probably add one. I'm not sure whether we can justify a TFL one, but I guess you might. Will you be old enough to enter the main awards next year?
Yep.
All right. Okay. So problem solved.
There you go.
That's going to be a lot of building to do in a relatively short amount of time.
I think that would be the biggest thing to add for years coming, because there are a lot of people who I can name several off the top of my head of people who build not just a locomotive but do build a matching consist for the locomotive that they're building, like several named passenger trains in the United States, several several instances where an entry could fit into that category, and I think it definitely warrants more discussion about adding it for next year.
Yeah, we're definitely up for considering it. Maybe when I've recovered, I still haven't fully recovered from the awards. So, would there be another category you might add, Glenn, or have you covered yours?
I heard just in talking with Kale, as kind of just talking about the awards in general this year, I heard something about a judges category.
Yeah, so we had
and that being left up to a public vote.
Yeah, we had a public vote. So we had a shortlist of models. So we asked each judge to send some models through, and we picked a shortlist and then let the public vote on them.
I was thinking more of models that judges enter.
Oh,
models,
I see.
Models built by the judges, not just judges' choice.
Okay, well, I would definitely lose that one. Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Yeah, potentially. I guess that would be too much.
Maybe I interpreted judges' choice wrong, but that's what I thought of. But
that would be fun too. Yeah, because having the judges go against each other, that would be fun. Yeah.
2 judges, 1 leaves.
I think that's distracting too much from the people who are entering. Like
that would be not necessarily for an award specifically, just for having the fun and having the sake for it.
Yeah. You should not combine it in the same competition. You can always do everything for fun, but I think as a teacher, I think I never let my students show how good I am. It's all about them, and there should be some kind of distance. I think it's nicer to have the judges just be not building. But
and we try. There's a bit of rotation between judges as well, because obviously as a judge you can't enter the awards. So Glenn wasn't a judge this year because he was busy, but also was able to then enter. So I think we will. And the judge for Australasia as well had also swapped over. So I imagine we might have 2 judges again next year, but we'll see. We are running ever later, and Matt has some lovely editing to do. So we'll keep going on this question, and that's it. So who hasn't answered and would like to? Miller?
Remove Steam. There you go.
Yep, that's a very Miller.
I don't have a proper answer, so that's all you get.
That's about normal, yeah. Will?
I mean, my basic thing was I'm not ever been a big fan of the other category in any of the sections. The locomotive other, like, they tend to find it's like, well, that could have been in Steam, or if you have a narrow gauge category, that could have been in that. I just feel like the other seems to be a sort of, I like my design, but I don't think it win in the
ground.
So I'll put it in this one. It just seems a bit sort of get out of jail free.
We were stricter this year with people. People did try and enter in like categories they shouldn't have been entering in, so they did get moved. But yeah, the other category is a bit of a dumping ground because we need something that fits everything else. It's like miscellaneous locomotives. I don't know.
I mean, the thing is, like, you could say that, like for instance, a turbo locomotive would arguably fit in the diesel category quite fine, because design-wise, with the exception of turbo motive and a couple of very rare examples, most of them were designed in the same way a diesel would have been designed, just with a different power unit. So then at that point you go, well, that might as well just go in the diesel design. Like a narrow gauge steam engine is still a steam engine. It just happens to have slightly narrower track. And same with broad gauge. You know, it just has a different sized track. It doesn't mean it's particularly different from any other steam engine.
I would like to see a monorail category for next year.
I'm not sure we get many entries.
Well, you would. There'd just be modern variations of the city aircraft airport one.
We did have a great email at the start of the awards from a woman somewhere in Europe. I can't remember where. No, somewhere in America, asking if we had a kids award thing, and I thought that could be quite fun. Just have like everything under 13 in one category.
Yeah.
Best Duplo train. That'd be fun.
Carter, you cannot put in a Duplo train
Ask your parents' permission before going online.
Choo. Yes, I would still lose. Thanks, Henry.
Natural obsession with Duplo. It's weird.
I do love my Duplo. Tamas, do you have an idea for a category you'd remove from this year's awards and replace with your own idea?
Sorry, I was doing some other things. I'm in quarantine, and I just heard that my first corona test was negative. So, but
oh, good. Wow.
I personally would like to see something with DMUs, or I discussed this with Aaron last 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I really would like to see that for auto trains or diesel electric units or those things. But I don't know a category that can be removed or something.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else before we round up? I think everybody's been now, haven't they? I think so.
I can add one if you like.
Oh God, go on then.
A second diesel one, so that you could enter twice, and in theory you could even win twice for the same model.
Excellent. Probably not though.
Best Diesel 1, Best Diesel 2.
I mean, you're going to have to try and win the first time before you try and win a second time.
Yeah, very true. Okay, guys, thank you very much. So thanks to our guests. We have Enrico, Glenn, Jelle, and Tamas. Thank you very much for coming along and chatting to us about the Brick Train Awards. Thanks also to members, so Andrew and Henry, Matt, Miller, Will, Renzo, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for listening. Check LNUR out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel and probably a couple of other things I've forgotten as well. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon.